Hi, my name is Tara, and I'm going to be talking about the rhetoric of fast fashion. So, before we dive further into the rhetoric of fast fashion, we must better understand the term itself. So, fast fashion is a term used to describe a both highly profitable and exploitative business model based on the replication of high-end designer trends and mass producing them at a low cost. Oftentimes, this requires the exploitation of workers in what many consider to be inhumane conditions. The term also is used to generically describe the products of the fast fashion business model itself. Such a business model was only made possible during the late 20th century as the manufacturing of cloth became cheaper and easier through new synthetic materials like polyester and nylon, in addition to efficient supply chains and inexpensive sweatshop labor in outsourced countries. Companies like H&M and Zara have built their business models based on inexpensive clothing from their efficient production lines, and they use these to create seasonal and trendy designs that are aggressively marketed to fashion-conscious consumers. This model applies an extreme version of the planned obsolescence to clothing. Because these designs are changing so quickly and are very inexpensive, consumers will buy more clothing than they would prior, and the expectations for these clothes to last have greatly decreased. Additionally, stealing designs are very common. In this video, I argue that while fast fashion aims to make clothing more accessible, it has proven to be an unsustainable business model via the promotion of overconsumption, poor working conditions, and textile waste. Prior to the 1800s, the creation of fashion was an intensive and time-consuming process, which first required the sourcing of materials, then the treating and preparing of these materials by hand, and then the weaving or fashioning of them into functional garments, which was also done by hand. However, the Industrial Revolution permanently changed the world of fashion by introducing new technologies like the sewing machine and textile machines. This led to innovations such as ready-to-make clothes and mass production factories. Because of this, clothing became increasingly cheaper and easier and faster to make. During the Second World War, the trend of more functional styles, in addition to fabric restrictions, led to the standardized production of clothing. Once the middle-class consumers grew increasingly accustomed to it, they became receptive to the idea of mass-produced clothing. Until the mid-20th century, the fashion industry produced and ran clothes for 4 seasons a year, with designers working many months in advance in order to predict what the customers would want in the future. However, in the 60s and 70s, this method was changed drastically as the younger generations began to create new trends using cheaply made clothing as a form of personal expression. Due to its rapid and widespread development, it is difficult to pinpoint the creator of fast fashion as a concept to a singular brand or company. However, this credit is often given to Amancio Ortega, who founded Zara in 1975. Originating in Spain, Ortega's clothing featured products that were affordable replications of popular higher-end clothing fashions, in addition to the producing of his own unique designs. Zara opened in New York in the early 1990s, where the New York Times first coined the term fast fashion to describe the mission of his store, which stated that it would only take 15 days for a garment to go from the designer's brain to being sold on the racks. Ortega, after retiring, surpassed Bill Gates to become the richest man in the world in 2015, and today remains one of the wealthiest men in the world. The parent company of Zara owns thousands of stores worldwide. On average, Americans today are purchasing 5 times more clothing than they did since the 1980s. Some may wonder how this is possible, but this can be easily explained by this graph here, which directly correlates the rise of fast fashion in the 80s to the lowering in cost of clothing and footwear compared to the relative cost of other items such as food, housing, and other needs. Perhaps the most heavily scrutinized aspect of fast fashion is the working conditions that are used. On April 23, 2013, the Rana Plaza factory in Bangladesh collapsed, which resulted in the death of over 1,000 people in what is considered the largest factory disaster in modern times, bringing light to the issue rampant within the industry. This is perhaps reminiscent of Industrial Revolution-era factory disasters. As for the environmental impact, Goodwills in New York and New Jersey alone received more than 85.7 million pounds of textile donations just in the year of 2018. New York and New Jersey is only one of the 164 regional Goodwill organizations throughout the US and Canada, and is also one of countless other thrift store organizations. Not only do these donations come from individuals dropping off clothes that are no longer wanted, but also from manufacturers and retail stores who have a surplus of product. This creates a great burden on these donation centers. Workers, after sorting through the items, send the items to retail locations, and if those aren't sold within 4 weeks, they are sent to an outlet where clothing is sold by the pound. Items that are not sold there are sorted and baled and sold to textile recycling companies or importers overseas, which then sell it to countries with developing economies. Because many fast fashion brands have received heavy media and public scrutiny, many of them have begun to rebrand as a more eco-conscious company. Here is a dress from Zara, one of the first ones when Googling the name of the brand that appeared, and here it says, "The Green to Wear 2.0 standard aims to minimize the environmental impact of textile manufacturing." So the Green to Wear title leads one to believe that it would be environmentally sustainable. However, right under this block of text, we can see that the outer shell is 100% polyester, which is plastic fibers, and it doesn't even state that it's been recycled, so we can assume that it is newly created plastic just for the dress. To conclude, while it is practically impossible to entirely distance yourself from fast fashion in the current world, there are ways in which to distance yourself from the constant trend cycles. While buying clothing secondhand is a great option to save money and reduce waste, clothing from designer or slow fashion brands is very expensive and inaccessible to the vast majority of people. A great way to interact with fast fashion is to consider more than the price tag or what is on sale. Reflect on where and how many times you would wear the item, or even consider if you would still be willing to buy it if it costs significantly more, which would likely be a reality if the items were ethically produced. Thank you for watching.